Good morning, everyone. Jim Lord joining you live from Darioma, Nicaragua. Let me get Instagram going here. I hope you had a great Thanksgiving. I took a week off with the holiday. Not so much a holiday for me, but for a holiday for everyone else. So I hope you're doing well today. I had a good time actually here in Nicaragua. Um, for Thanksgiving, they start actually Christmas partying here towards the end of November, and they keep going. Like, it's crazy. You go into town and it's just Christmas parties. The school's let out, so all the kids are out. They've got parties and dancing and music, and it's one big party from now until the after New Year's. So it's kind of fun, but I live out here where it's nice and quiet, so I can kind of pick and choose when I want to go do that. So today, the cold hard truth I do not want to tell you, or I can also say the lies of the fitness industry. We'll jump right into this. I think the number one thing the fitness industry kind of misleads people about is that you can be anything you want as long as you work hard enough. This is not necessarily true at all. You have a certain structure. You have to be brutally honest, for me, my structure is wide. I'm going to be really good at creating force, short distances, like 5-10 yard sprints. That's why I played fullback in wrestling, or fullback in football, and offensive defensive line. I was really good at Roman Greco wrestling. Not very good at rotating. Really good at creating force. Really great at creating pressure. Those positives have side effects, and they have consequences. Not necessarily good or bad. They're all trade-offs. Now you have the opposite body type, which is more of a long tubular type. Your wide receivers, your basketball players, these type of people, your baseball pitchers that are long and lanky. These people do really well at rotational activities, and they move like well rotationally. I don't, okay, which is great for offensive line. People that rotate well are great overhead throwers. They throw the javelin well, they throw a baseball well. And of course, we're just talking about the two extremes. And there's all sorts of people in the middle, but there'll be people that are built like me that try to go out and run marathons. And marathon running, to be excellent at it, requires a certain body type. Lifting extremely heavy weights requires certain structures. That doesn't mean there's not outliers, but understanding what you're dealing with. Like, I'm a monster truck, essentially. It's probably not a good idea for me to go run my monster truck with monster truck tires on it on an IndyCar circuit. Just like it's probably not a good idea to take your IndyCar, if you're an IndyCar, and go mudding off-roading in your IndyCar. It's not going to end well for you. Okay. You're going to get stuck, and you're going to be calling a tow truck, and then you're going to be doing a lot of really expensive repairs. So knowing your body type, knowing your body structure, and working within that and becoming the best version of you. For me, I don't want to drive my strengths any further that they become a problem. For example, say you're a Camry, right? And you want to be a faster Camry. You want to turn it into more of a race car. Okay. So as you start making the Camry faster, you stiffen the suspension, you pull out a lot of the luxuries, the comforts of the inside the car to get it faster and faster and faster. Well, if you're just going to race your Camry on a track or in a drag race, that's totally fine. But if you're going to drive your Camry to work every day and it has, no carpet inside, you've taken the air conditioning out because you want the car to go faster, all these things are going to affect the comfort level of your vehicle. And the harder you drive the car, the more maintenance you have to do, and the more it's going to break, right? And not everyone is different. Some people are Corollas, which are great. Corollas never break down. You change the oil, you drive them reasonably, you'll probably never have to do anything to them. Same with Camrys. You start getting into Corvettes, Bugattis, Ferraris, they can drive hard enough to break things. One, you drive a Ferrari hard enough, you can break axles, you can break structure. Tires are going to be really expensive to replace. Brakes are going to be really expensive to replace. So the more you drive performance, the more risk there is for what I'd call catastrophic consequences. So if your goal is to look good and feel good and live a long time, you want to be somewhere in the middle. You don't, obviously, most people don't want to be like a Lada or a Yugo or a Fiat, right? They want to have a little better car than that. You want to be somewhere in the middle, like a really nice Lexus or something like that, that requires minimal maintenance. You do the regular maintenance. You might have to pay a little more for when you change the tires. If you take care of the Lexus, it's going to last a long time. It's going to look good. It's not going to last as long as the Corolla. It's not going to be as cheap as the Corolla, but most people would rather drive around in a nice mid-range Lexus than drive around in a Corolla, even though the Corollas are really nice. If you're a Bugatti, or if you want to try and perform like a Bugatti, it's going to be very expensive. That's why most people that are trying to be performance beasts, run really low body fat numbers year round, do all those things, they end up usually have to be on TRT. They usually have to be on a lot of peptides. It usually comes with some challenges. They usually have, they're training a lot. Their diet is very restrictive, so it affects their social life. So there's trade-offs with all these things. If you want to be, less than 10% body fat, it's gonna basically, cost you. And most people don't think about that. The second thing is that this lean, ripped physique is the ideal, the epitome of health. And if you look at the Blue Zone people, they are not physically impressive people. Okay. I've been around a lot of Blue Zone people. I live amongst a lot of elderly 80, 90-year-olds that are riding around on dirt bikes. They're not ripping down the road on a dirt bike. They're out here cutting, they're cutting the grass, and they're doing chores with a machete. They're doing gardening. They're doing they're washing the lawn. There's an 85-year-old woman here that washes laundry. She walks up and down the street selling tortillas. They're doing low-level manual labor constantly. They're not physically impressive. They're not big people. They're little people. They're doing labor constantly. They're not at the gym. They're not doing zone 2 cardio. They're not doing HIIT classes. They're doing active outdoor stuff. And this is common with the Asian, the Okinawans. This is common no matter where these people are not doing high intensity workouts. Now, I understand, myself included, wanting to have an athletic, lean physique. But that doesn't necessarily lead to longevity outcomes. There comes a point, I think our culture, because we're so sedentary, is trying to make up for that by adding in all this exercise. And I don't think it bleeds over into longevity. It bleeds over into quality of life. But if you look at the people, I used to go to, when I was in high school and middle school in Canada, I loved talking to the World War I veterans. And, I spent a lot of time in retirement homes just talking. I would go to a retirement home when I was in the 8th grade. I would just walk there and go inside and just sit next to some of these guys and just talk to them. But I'm kind of weird like that. I really love talking to these, and they loved having me come. I mean, if you're 105, 106, 107 years old, and you got this young kid coming to talk to you and ask you questions about your life and what it was like, I mean, that would light their day up, None of these people were physically impressive, right? Some of them had been in the war, so they'd gone through some pretty crazy things. Most of them were farmers. Most of them worked at a low level, farming labor their entire life. So this notion that performance, being a performance beast, having six-pack abs, is going to make you live longer, I don't see it. I just don't see it. And reading about Blue Zone people and being around Blue Zone people, I don't see it. Now, we're trying to cheat the system with TRT and peptides and hormones and all that, and that's great. but the lifestyle and the stress, if you look at these cultures, like in Asia, it's pretty much culturally taught that you don't eat to excess. Like, you don't eat to your stuff. You stop at 80% full, right? That's culturally in their culture, that you don't overeat. So that's definitely not in American culture. So there's lots of factors like that. Playing off of that is that super lean equals super healthy. Most men do really well between 8 on the low end and about 15%. They do great. They feel good. A lot of people that get into like 12, 13, 14, 15, they look really good. They actually look better than being at 8%. Once you start getting below 10% for a man, most guys don't do well. Their hormone levels drop. That's why most people that are ultra lean are using some sort of hormone replacement therapy or taking some things to help them along the way. So there comes a price. There's a trade-off. When you get lean, and if you get too lean, it starts to affect your hormone production. It starts to affect how you feel. It starts to affect your emotional well-being and health. And then most people, some people are just, I played college football with guys that just are built and they're lean, like paper lean, and that's just how they are, and that's totally fine. But, if I've worked with plenty of athletes, females, males, where we actually had to put body fat on them because their low body fat was affecting their ability to perform their sport. So sometimes you actually have to add body fat to people for you to improve their hormone profile, for you to actually improve their health. I've worked with a lot of women that have trained their butt off, have gotten Hashimoto's, doing multiple figure competitions, doing extreme calorie restriction for long periods of time on top of like hard training with stimulants, with fat burners, and they've just cooked themselves. And you actually have to reverse diet them out of that. My friend Alan Kress, who used to be my roommate, he has helped, I don't know how many countless bodybuilders and figure competitors get themselves in a better place after wrecking themselves from hard dieting. And I think Instagram has really social media has really hurt that, because affected that, because it used to be, if you look at like Arnold, there's plenty of pictures of Arnold when he was doing pumping iron. He's getting ready for Olympias. He's all veiny. He's jacked. He's ripped. He looks, whatever, he's competition ready. And then you go look for other pictures of Arnold. He had times on the off season, he came off most of the drugs. He would eat, more liberally, and he wouldn't be as lean. He still was muscular, but he wasn't ripped. He didn't have veins sticking out of everywhere. And he would give his body a rest. And you can't look like ultra lean and in your best shape. You can't do that all year round. You can't be in top physical condition all year round. That's why they have an off season in all sports, because they know they can't push these guys constantly year round. There has to be a variance in intensity. There has to be an off season. That's why kids need to play multiple sports. Kids need to play and have fun. And the other kind of thing, and women particularly, I see women do best between, I'd say, 15 and 25%. Anything below 30 is good for women. And a lot of women will look, actually, I had one woman come to me who years ago, who was 28%, and I thought she looked phenomenal. She didn't like it. She trained and got herself down to like 18%, and she's like, "Oh, I don't really like how this, like, I don't like how my clothes fit now. I've lost some fat in places that I didn't want to lose. I didn't want to lose my curves." She started losing her curves, and then so she slowly brought herself back up, and she ended up being around 22, where she was very happy. So a lot of times we have this, like, social media influencer ripped six-pack abs culture, and that's great if you want to do that, if you get there and you're happy there and you have a good social life. But a lot of people don't understand the most centurions have extra body fat. They do. That's absolutely right, Jim. They're not super lean. So if longevity is your goal, then you don't want to be at either extreme. I've talked to tons of orthopedic surgeons, and like Dr. Stuart McGill. We talked about, like, all the people that get hip replacements and joint replacement surgeries. They're either the ultra bendy yogi people, or the extreme like powerlifter people. It's not the people in the middle that are getting, hip and joint replacements. It's the people on the two extremes. So when it comes to longevity and health, you want to be somewhere in the middle, and you want to flirt with performance, but you don't want to marry it. There's nothing wrong with challenging yourself. There's nothing wrong with, obviously I love strength training because it gives you a lot of return for investment as far as body fat loss, because, as far as body fat is concerned, losing body fat and getting leaner, strength training is the most effective thing for that. And strength training, walking, and your diet are the most effective. It's very hard to train hard enough for most people to actively burn enough calories to lose a significant amount of body fat from just high intensity training. Most people can't train that hard for that long. And it's so easy to undo that. Say you burn X, like say you burn 200 calories. You can blow that out the window with one donut in 2 seconds, right? So, doing all the basics, getting outside, getting your sleep in order, that's what's most important if you want to be healthy over the long run. And then you want to challenge yourself. You want to work within your means. So that's a big one. Being ultra lean is not necessarily healthy. And if you like being ultra lean and that's kind of how you run, good for you. But if you're a guy or a woman, don't feel like you have to have a six-pack abs to be healthy. There's plenty of healthy people that are running around 10 or 12% for men and 15 to 20, 22 for women. And they do great. They have a social life. They can go out. They can go out with their friends. They can eat a couple meals a week that, or more cheatish type meals and not have any guilt or not, oh my gosh, I'm going to lose my six pack. You'd be surprised how easy it is once you accept the fact that, hey, like you don't have to be like super ripped all the time. And if you want to get really lean, that's totally fine. There's ways you can do that. But understand it's probably in your best interest to go through phases where you eat a little more, you eat a little less. A really good way to do that is, fistful of protein, fistful of vegetables, add carbs around your workout, kind of get into a place where you're not hungry, you feel good, you're performing well, your lifts, your strength's going up, and all that kind of stuff. And then if you want to lean out, then you start removing a little bit of food at a time, and you do it for a period of time to where your sleep starts to suffer, your training isn't going as well, and then you maybe add a little more in and stay there for a while. So eating at a maintenance or a slight deficit or maintenance, and then cutting back a little bit and seeing how your training goes. And then your training starts to tank and your sleep starts to tank, you add a little bit back more in, and you just kind of do this up and down step, and you lose maybe half a pound or a pound a week, and you end up doing better in the long run, as opposed to constantly crash dieting. It's good to have what we call refeeds, or times when you take time off. And obviously, the more time you get outside, the better your circadian rhythm is, the easier it's going to be for you to be lean. And just understand, not everybody's designed to be ripped. Like, most people don't function well with ultra low body fat. That's just something you kind of have to accept. The other thing is that intensity is king. That is the furthest thing from the truth. You have a finite amount of resources that you can handle, and everyone's a little bit different. Some people can get away with a lot more than others. Your Michael Jordans, your Dennis Rodmans, your Lawrence Taylors, they can abuse the living heck out of themselves, but even they have a finite amount of resources and a finite amount of recovery time. So understanding, a lot of the people I work with are really hard workers, and a lot of times they've got so much going on in their life. They're working a lot, they got a family, and they're training, and we actually dial their training back, and they actually start to get better. Because your body, like, training is only as good as your body's ability to adapt to it, right? And so if your body is overwhelmed and it's not adapting to what you're doing, you're not going to get good long-term results. So a lot of times we have to, talk to people about sleep, talk to people about nutrition, build their resilience, and then we have to do things to prepare them. If you do want to be a high performer, most people don't realize, they only see Usain Bolt like run the 100-meter dash in like 9, whatever it is. They don't see the countless hundreds of thousands of hours that Usain Bolt did skipping. Like, I'm talking B skip, A skip, like stuff on the playground, like when you're in elementary school. Like, this is not like craziness. The number of like basketball players, they only see like the basketball game and you hit the big shot. They don't see the thousands of free throws these guys do. They don't see the low level like crossover dribbling. All they see is the competition. They don't see the hours and hours of dedication and sport that goes into this stuff. And the mental aspect of it too, the film study, like guys like Tom Brady and Deion Sanders. You know, Tom Brady is a great example of somebody who beat people with his mind, not with his physicality. He wasn't a very good athlete. He was good enough, but he had to learn how to throw the ball well with technique, not with pure athleticism. That's one of the reasons he lasted so long, is he beat you with his brain. And even Deion, who is an incredible athlete, Deion studied film for hours. Guys like Ray Lewis, you know, guys like Ed Reed, who are great athletes, but what set those guys apart was the fact that they were prepared and they watched film and they practiced relentlessly on the basics. And that's why these football coaches, or like you have football coaches, you have coaches to make players do. Nobody wants to do the warm-up. Nobody wants to do the film study. Nobody wants to do like the warm-up sets. Nobody wants to do all the work it takes to prepare yourself for the intensity. Everybody just wants to show up and go hard. And I enjoy actually the preparation. I enjoy doing my 5-10 minute warm-ups every day. I enjoy going for my 10-minute walks. I enjoy eating really good, healthy food. I enjoy treating my body well. So I can train hard when I choose to. And understanding also the adaptations you're trying to drive. Okay. In order to lift big weights, your body has to stiffen up and become more rigid, becomes very compressed. So for me to continue to lift heavier weights than I can right now, and I can lift more than, you know, I'm not going to like brag about what I can lift and stuff. But with the way I'm built, I can lift a pretty, compared to the average person, I can lift some pretty big weights. In order for me to improve that, my back health is going to be affected. Not right off the bat. Obviously, I've lifted for a long time, you know, since I was like 13. And my joints are in pretty good shape. My back's in pretty good shape, considering how many car accidents I've been in. Most of my major injuries that I've had are not from the weight room. They're from car wrecks and motorcycle crashes and things like that. But if I continue to try and get stronger, I am going to continue to lose mobility in my shoulders. I'm going to continue to make it more difficult for me to walk, because the adaptations required for me to increase strength are going to take away from my ability to move well. So I need to do more flowing things. And there's people on the other spectrum as well. Women, for example, there's women that are ultra bendy, or a woman that's had multiple children. Her pelvic floor is kind of compromised and she can't create pressure and stiffness very well. Something like squats and deadlifts might help her create enough pressure to help her function better. And a lot of women that are ultra bendy need to get a little more stiff and stable. But that might not always be the case. Say you have a woman that you've trained for 4 or 5 years. She's gone from being able to deadlift a 50-pound kettlebell, and I've had this, to being able to deadlift like in the mid 300s in like a 4-year period. And now we need to like, driving her deadlift to 400 pounds is not really going to do anything for her. So now it's a matter of just like, this person really likes deadlifting. So doing enough deadlifting, maintain that strength, which doesn't take a lot. And then making sure that we're doing stuff to help her move well, and make sure we don't drive the adaptations that allowed her to deadlift 300 and whatever pounds any further, that she doesn't have back pain, knee pain, you know, all these other sorts of things. And then she's able to move well and walk and do all those things. Women tend to do a little better with high levels of strength, because, you know, they can't train hard enough or lift heavy enough weights. There's a few exceptions to that, to get them in a strategy that's just like super, super stiff. because women just cannot produce the same force that men can. And that's why women can lift. Like, you can take the cool thing about training women is they can lift heavier weights and they can lift at a higher intensity. It's kind of like driving your Corolla all out versus driving your Lamborghini all out. If you redline your Lamborghini and you drive it at full blast and you slam the brakes on as hard as you can, you're going to be replacing a lot of parts. If you drive your Corolla at full blast, you're not going to be replacing as many parts, because it's pretty hard to drive the Corolla fast enough for it to injure itself. I mean, this isn't like an insult against women. It's just reality that women are designed more for endurance type activities. Like, give a woman like 2 kids and a diaper bag and a stroller, and she'll carry them all day without even, like, she'll just do it. Like, I see women here all the time with a basket on their head, a woman on, or a child on one hip and another baby breastfeeding, and she's walking down the street like nothing. Dude, you give a dude like a 3-year-old or a 2-year-old and he's carrying them, and he's like, in 5 minutes, he's like, oh my gosh, I need to take a break, because we're designed for more high threshold, kill it, drag it home type activities, and women are designed for more moderate. A woman can take 95% of her max on the squat, deadlift, and pull it for 6. There's no way in heck I'm taking 95% of my squat or deadlift max and pulling it for 6 reps. That ain't happening, right? I'm pulling 95% for maybe 3 singles, and then I'm going to take 3 weeks off because I'm shot. So it's a totally different animal. So there's just and I think one of the big things the supplement industry and marketing has sold people is like, there's a magic pill, there's a magic potion. Yes, there are some things that can make a dramatic difference, but what are the long-term consequences of those things? And if you're not, there's the magic supplements, the peptides, all these things have their place. But if you don't have the 5 fundamental habits, if you're not making an effort to get outside, if you don't have a good circadian rhythm, if your circadian rhythm is not in order, if you're not getting a protein at every meal, if you're not getting high quality water, if you're not getting the lights off at night, and you don't have some sort of social connection, all these little magic tricks that they're trying to sell you are, maybe they're going to work, but they're not going to have great therapeutic runway. The fundamentals, eating real food, getting outside, getting in nature, managing your stress, all these things that the blue zone people do should be the foundation of your pyramid. The peptides, the supplements, that's the very top of the pyramid, and they're strategically used to give yourself an advantage and to help you recover faster. They should not be the foundation of your pyramid. That's when you end up getting in trouble. You end up you start looking for solutions with supplements and peptides, as opposed to like, okay, I have low energy. I'm working 80 hours a week. I'm only sleeping 3 hours a night. I'm going to take something to get me. And I have this all the time. I deal with this all the time with high performers. They're like, I'm only sleeping 4 hours a night. What can I take to keep me going? And it's like, you can do all sorts of things, but it's probably not going to end well for you. You might want to start, doing some meditation, getting in the float tank, doing some non-sleep deep rest, as opposed to like taking stimulants to drive your car even harder. Eventually you have to take your car to the shop, or else it's not going to run very well, or it's going to break down. And that's where the fitness industry is constantly like, well, do this program, or take this, or do that, or this is the new miracle pill, or do this thing or that thing. The fundamentals, the basics are the basics. And it doesn't matter if you're an elite level athlete or everyday person. You need to have the basic fundamental things, just like football, basketball. Basketball, you need to be able to dribble with both hands. You need to be able to cross over. Obviously, if you're a center, you don't have to have as good a ball handling skills as if you're a point guard. But you have to have those foundational things. So many kids I saw when I was training high school kids that could dunk and could do all the fancy stuff, but couldn't do the basic fundamental things in football. Guys that were really fast, they couldn't run the whole route tree. They couldn't block, they couldn't run a route over the middle. They had no footwork. They didn't block. They weren't physical, and they washed out because they didn't have that fundamental habit skills. And they're actually having a big problem with that in basketball, because everybody's shooting the threes. Nobody has a mid-range jumper. Nobody knows how to play defense anymore. So there's going to be a little bit of a pushback on that, where the basics are going to come back. I mean, if I was going to start a basketball team today, I would just get the biggest, meanest dudes I could find and just slam it right down the middle. You know, we'd be dunking and we'd be shooting like little sky hooks, and everything would be in the paint. And then I'd have one guy to crush the threes when they tried to stop everybody in the paint. But I would just set up in the paint and just punish people. That's the way I would approach basketball today. But I'm obviously not a basketball coach or own a basketball team, so that's not going to happen. So there's just a few thoughts. So overall, if longevity is your goal, flirt with performance, don't marry it. Don't be obsessed with ultra low body fat. For most people, if you want to get really lean for a certain period of time to look a certain way, great. Most people can't maintain that. And it's okay. You know, if you're under 20% for a woman, you're doing fantastic. And if you're under 15% for a dude, you're doing great, you know, and it all depends on what you want. And then you'd be surprised. Like if you're, 12 or 13, 15% as a guy, and you do a little extra hypertrophy work and you take some creatine, you can make a huge difference. Just water, when you're down below 15%, just manipulating water and taking a little creatine can make you look a lot fuller. And then adding a little extra volume training and specific carbohydrate feeding can make you look pretty good at like just below 15%. So, and then most women perform better when they eat right at maintenance or slight surplus, and they focus on improving performance and building muscle as opposed to trying burn it off, so to speak. And then overall, if your goal is to live to be 100 plus, then you should be outside doing tons of manual labor. Make sure you don't overeat. Make sure you have good social connection. You're not doing, you're doing exercise, but nothing is like crazy intense. And you're doing a great job managing your stress. And it would probably help if you moved to one of the blue zones. So, but, when you move somewhere new, not everybody can handle living somewhere where they don't speak the language and they don't know a lot of people. Not too many people can handle that. So just because you move somewhere where the climate's better, you're getting more sun, doesn't mean I've done fairly well where I am, but I've always kind of been a lone ranger my whole life. And I know I have enough social connection here that I do fine, but it's not easy. A lot of people are like, oh, if I just move to the equator, I'll get more sun. I'll feel so much better. Everything will be better. That's not necessarily true. When you're lonely and you don't have a lot of social connection and you've moved away from your family, all of a sudden, especially in these like third world countries where alcohol is cheaper than water, a lot of people move here and, become alcoholics and all sorts of other fun stuff. So there's just a few thoughts for you. What do we got going on? Let's see. Of course, I got my men's community. Jake Campbell was nice enough to promote my men's community, and we've got it up to just in the mid 200s now. So the Vitality Brotherhood is no longer free. It's now $29 a month. Had 2 great coffee calls last night, so you can go check that out if you like. Got a call with Dr. Stillman here at 10 o'clock this morning in the VIP membership at Stillman Wellness. And then I'm going to get back to my regular schedule of the Monday live with the Thursday webinar. Of course, if you have any questions, you can leave it in the comments, or you can message me on Instagram if you're watching this on Instagram, or if you can email me at jimlaird@stillmanmd.com. And let me see if there's any questions on Instagram. Happy to take some questions if anyone would like to ask some questions. I see we've got a good number of people watching. So happy to answer questions if you have them. And Jim, thank you for the comment on that. Super true. Nature doesn't like extremes. And and that's the thing too. Like there's a difference between survival and development. And if you're trying to increase your resiliency, if you look at children and how they develop, and I'll look at my puppy, for example, that I have, he's constantly playing at a low level and chasing and with the other dogs. And he's basically learning how to survive and how to fight through play. And if you look at children, the way they develop, it's not extreme. They're learning in a low stress environment. They start by playing with their feet and they're moving their head around, and then they roll to their side, and then they stand up and they fall and they fail. And then they kind of, through play, they learn how to handle higher intense situations. And so their body never gives them anything they can't handle. And training is the same way. And if you're trying to build resiliency, there's a difference when you go to BUD/S, like Navy SEAL training. It's not training, it's elimination. They're trying to see who the weak people are, who's weak mentally here, who's going to break, who's going to turn on their teammates when things get tough. That's called elimination. That's called, football camp tryout. It's not about development. It's about seeing who can remember the plays, who's physically capable. That's not development. Development is not testing. It's testing in some ways. It's testing occasionally to see if you're improving in the ways you want to. But development is bringing the level of learning down so the body can learn a new skill and develop over time, and then adding stress when appropriate. A lot of people confuse testing with development, and it's a totally different animal. So have yourself a great day. I look forward to seeing you next week. Make sure you get outside today. You deserve it.